Hello, hello, hello. We're live. We're live. How's everyone doing out there? I'm not sure who's watching. Let me get my screen up so I could see. I can't see anybody. Okay. So anyway, welcome. This is gonna be my first show. This is the first of four that I'm going to be conducting for 343 Labs. Where each month I'm going to be breaking down one genre. This month it's going to be electronic music by one of my favorite people, dope client, dope producer, dope DJ Patlock. And the song is called No One. And we're going to talk about it today. I'm going to answer some questions and show you guys exactly what I did to the record to help enhance the production and make it sound good. So first off, I want to thank Max and Thomas at 343 Labs. If you guys are looking to take some courses on production, Ableton, Logic, mixing, you go right to 343 Labs and make that happen. And also, any information you want on me, you can go to my website, which is arielborujow.com. You can get some information on me as well. And let me just pull up the chat so I could start answering questions. Give me 1 second. Okay, we're on. Max, Nick, hello everyone. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to play the record for you guys and give you the feel for the record, and then we'll talk a little bit about the mindset. We'll go over the tracks. I'll give you guys my philosophy for mixing. Again, I tell everyone there's really no rules in mixing. I'm a big believer that mixing comes from the heart, and it's a feeling, and depending on your mood that day is the feeling that you're going to put into a record. So be in a good mood. So I'm going to play the record now, and feel free to ask questions as we go along, all right? I'm not going to wait till the last 15 minutes of everything. I want to start right away. And it's kind of weird because I'm watching myself on the screen there, which is really crazy. Anyway, here goes nothing.
Oh my, oh my.
First off, I just want to say my son Noah is watching, and I do want to say hello to him. So hello, Noah. Daddy's on YouTube. Love you, buddy. Here we go.
Oh my, so gone is yesterday. I'm older. Time is washing over me, sweet harmony. I am now and now is me. I never been this far. Always more than one can see. So what you waiting for? Baby, there ain't no one that's got the light that
All right, there you guys got it. There's the record. Thank you for joining me. I'm out. Now, let's start. So, first thing is, there's already questions. Okay, so how do you master well? Okay, so here's the deal. I don't master. I do have a limiter on the master bus, just to make it louder. So the client, when I send to any client, I want the levels to match what's out on streaming or radio or whatever. So I try to match the peak and the LUFS levels to what I think would be the standard, just so they have a comparison. By no means is it mastered. But what happens is when you mix, the intention of the mix in general is to get the mix as close as what you hear. I used to leave a lot of room for mastering, which I still do. I leave room as far as headroom, but as far as brightness and all of that, my mindset is made that I need to get it to sound as close to the final product as possible, and then my mastering engineer Ricardo Gutierrez takes it to the next level, and that's always been the mindset. So let me go over the record with you guys. And there's some people that are on the stream that have watched me before. Some of this may be redundant. I don't care. We are going to go over every detail. So first thing is organization. You have to be organized when you mix. Anytime you mix, it's best to get into the mindset where you're 100% prepared for the task. So what I like to do is I like to color code everything, and I have a specific color code that I use. And if you guys look over here, anything brown is bass. This is one of the first times I've done this, is I actually put the kicks on a different color, just because I had 3 different kicks and I wanted to focus on them. Someone put that the kicks sound really good. Not much going on in the kicks. Pat's an amazing producer, and I respect him, and we definitely go back and forth. Usually Pat sends me the record ahead of time and gives me the option to give him any type of advice if it should be another kick, or if the kick is good enough, the bass is good enough, and we definitely have a conversation beforehand. Anything yellow is usually my drums. There's a guitar in green. All the keys, whether it be a whirly, a piano, or whatnot, is purple. Synths are the blue. There's a top melody, which is a bluish color. The strings is a greenish color, teal, whatever you want to call it. The effects are always light blue. And then I have a parallel distortion bus here. My sends are here, which I'm not even using this one, so we're going to hide that. I'm only using one effect on the music. I like to split my sends. So I like to use a specific set of reverbs or effects for the instrumental, and then I also like to have some on the other side for the vocals, so this way I can just focus on having specific reverbs just for the music and separately for the vocals. Sorry guys, I keep seeing myself on the screen. It looks really weird. So then after that, I split down the middle. I have my master section. I've changed a lot since this mix. This is a few months old now, but I have a master bus here. I actually printed this. These days I'm doing more bouncing to disc, and we can talk about that a little bit. And also, hello to everyone that's just joining. Welcome, welcome. And I have here a mastered the print bus, which is pretty much all my effects. Anything on the master. I have the compressor. I'm using a black box, but I'm doing it more on parallel. I have another compressor. I'll explain all this as we go along. I love this plugin. I'm just adding a little bit of top end. This is great from Plugin Alliance. Plugin Alliance has incredible plugins. Just doing some low end and high end boost. I have a gain from Slate. I always use the ATR 102 on most of my mixes. Ozone. Ozone, I'm using EQ, Dynamics, Exciter, Imager, and then I have an Oxford limiter. What I did do on this is I added a parallel mix, and this is something that I don't normally do all the time, right? I'm doing it on this mix for whatever reason, but I'm basically adding an entire parallel compression chain on the entire mix. And I'm using the Zen limiter from UAD with the K stereo, which basically takes that parallel signal and widens it out. A Cambridge EQ where I'm just basically high pass filtering the low end, and an ATR 102. And that's it on there on the master, and then I have the vocals. So I'm going to explain my thought process, and my mixes are always the same. I start the same on every mix. I start first off, it's important to get the feel of the record, and which means that you should start your mix with just faders and panning before you reach for any plugin. Because the way that I receive the files in general is I receive the files exactly how the producer intended to have it, which means with all of his processing. The difference is when it comes to vocals, I have them split the reverbs separately as a send return. So this way, if I'm EQing the vocal or if I need to add any additional compression or anything of that sort, what I end up doing is if the reverb was printed with the vocals, then anything I boost is going to affect the reverb, and I don't want that. So starting off is the drums. I'm going to mute all the vocals. And we'll just go through exactly. Let me just answer some questions. What time do you have on the return tracks for this? Good question, Max. For the instrumental, just for the instruments, the only effect that I'm using is I'm using the parallel distortion on a few things, which is the Devil Lock from Sound Toys, which I love. It's just about on every mix. Not using this, it's from Avid, but it's like a little reverb if I just want to push it back a little bit into the mix. And I'm using the K stereo where I'm actually widening it quite a bit. If you see, I'm clicking the mid side here, and I'm actually bringing the mid down 3 dB and adding, almost a dB and a half on the sides, and then I'm also bringing up the gain on the end here. That's it. So on the effect part of it, I'm just using a Dimension D. The Dimension D is a chorusing effect that I've been using for years when I was using the hardware unit, but sorry, my bad. Hope you guys can hear me now. The hardware unit I used to use back in the day, but UAD makes an awesome software version of it. But I basically use it, if you look here on bass, it makes the bass a little wider, a little fuller, and it adds dimension to the bass. So I'm using that. And sometimes, which I'm not doing it on here, I'm using the dimension. I use the Dimension D on like keys, like whirlies and things like that, just to add a little bit of a chorusing effect. And sometimes background vocals if I get real fancy. And then on the vocals, I'm definitely getting fancy. On the vocals, these are actually, these two here were the reverb returns from the actual vocals that Pat sent me. And as I said, I respect the producer, I respect the artist, and I respect the time that they put into it. So therefore, I am using this on the mix. And all this is, if you look at the effects returns here, it's actually you could see that it was printed. These are actually effects returns, and I colored them the same. On the other side is I'm using a medium stage plugin. It's a medium haul from UAD, the 480 little plate by Sound Toys. This is actually a algorithm that I remember using back in the day that a lot of my favorite engineers that I assisted for have used. This is called Silica Beads. It's kind of wild, and I'll go over it when we get to the vocals. We have the Echo Boy, but I'm using the Echo Boy more like as a an old Telray kind of like a slap delay. I always use the Waves doubler for my doubling. And this is some made up delay that I'm using. And I put a Valhalla vintage verb on it. And if you guys look, the mix knob is at 27% or so, just to add a little bit of dimension to the delay. And that's it. That's pretty much it. On the master, just a parallel master. Aren't those mastering plugins as opposed to mixing? Good question, Max. The Oxford. Oh, I'm going to answer another question after this, but the Oxford, no, I'm using it at the end. Generally, I put the limiter in about halfway through the mix because I pretty much am confident where the headroom is and I have everything set correctly. But I definitely add. I'm adding it 50% in, and it's on the master, so I print with it when I send to the client. And then when I send to mastering, I send Ricardo usually a limiter version and the non-limiter version. The non-limiter version, once I take the limiter off, I mean, I'm gaining like almost 3 or 4, maybe 5 dB of headroom, which gives Rick enough room. But the reason I send him the limiter is because of the fact that the client is so used to hearing it, the labels here is used to hearing it that way. So I pretty much want them to hear exactly, have Ricardo have a reference of what they're used to, and it also gives them a chance to beat that out, which he totally always does. You know, he's a mastering engineer and a master of his craft. So that's the answer to that. I hope I answered it. It says, do you use reference tracks when mixing this? Do you typically use when I always use reference tracks, but I don't use reference tracks in the sense like I want it to sound like this. My theory is always that if my song or my mix gets played next to in a certain playlist, I want to make sure that it flows from one song to the next and nobody feels anything and it can compete with what's out there. That's really it. And I also use a reference for when I get a client sending me their rough mix, so I understand the feel that they were going for. So if you guys look here, I have reference. I guess I didn't have it on here. I think it deleted automatically, but I would have the reference in here, and I just A/B back and forth. What's really dope about this is the same company that does levels, mastering the mix. Tom Frampton, his plugins are stellar. And what's really dope about this is if you click this button here up on the right, sorry, not this one, but you'll see a button here that when you import the rough, what it does is it'll match the volume to your mix, so you have a good reference, even though the client may have some crazy limiter on there and it might be a lot louder. It'll bring their level down, so you have a good reference point. So let's go through it. Let's see if there's any other questions real quick. What size of room for Valhalla? Good question. It's pretty big. It's a chamber. It's pretty large, 2.5 seconds. That's pretty long, actually. But again, I'm using it on I'm using the wet dry knob here, so I'm only at 27%. It's just to push the delay back in the mix a little bit. That's all. What else? Okay, so let's go through it, man. Let's focus on the bass and the drums for a bit. I'll just solo these and I'll explain what I'm doing. If you guys look here, right, there's not much going on as far as plugins on any of this. Like, a good producer has spent so much time with the sound design that there's not much to do except just run it through what you're using. And I start with the master bus processing all of this early in the mix. All of this is on really early in the mix process. So for me, the way that I view it is, you're welcome, Ben, is to, I'm like creating my own console sound. And as I'm pushing it through the console, through these plugins on the master, it's already giving it a sound. So if I'm using, like, if I'm boosting low end on the Lindell, which I'm boosting like 3 dB at 85 hertz, right? What's happening is, why am I going to add more low end on the kick, right? So if you go back to the kick drum here, only one of the kick drums has an EQ on it. And I'm actually compressing slightly, and I'm filtering out the low end at around 57 hertz, and I'm adding 1 dB at, let's say, 8K. That's it, right? There's not much going on. So let's listen to this, just the drums, and I'll go right to the drop. Now, the drums in general, right? I have a drum bus here, and I'm doing something really odd, but it's kind of cool. This is one of my favorite. I mean, these are like one of anything Sound Toys. Big shout out to Sound Toys. But the Decapitator lives on every single mix of mine. If I can have, this would be like one of the 3 plugins I would want to be stuck with on an island. If I had 3 choices, Decapitator would be one of them. It just enhances the sound. It saturates. It makes it super sexy, right? So I'm using the Decapitator, but I always use the wet dry knob here, and I'm just slightly. So I'm going to go without it, and I'm going to show you guys. I'm also using a parallel drum bus. I'm going to mute that. Here's the drums. And I'm going to bring in the Decapitator. If you guys listen really carefully, you can hear, I'm going to get to that, you can hear the high end is a little crunchier, and that's what I wanted with the Decapitator. And then after that, I have the Black Box by Plugin Alliance, and I'm also doing it here at 24%. So here's without. Pay attention to the hi-hats, the crack of the snare, all of that. And then I bring in the, I'm gonna show you guys exactly what the parallel. This is a parallel drum bus, and what I have on here is a distressor plugin by UAD. I love this thing, and a SSL EQ, which I'm just filtering around 20 hertz on the low end, and that's it. So this is without it, and I'll boost it to go. Yeah, it's super groovy. Pat is like a ridiculous piano player. He's really sick. Here we go. Without, and I'm gonna boost it. That's extreme, so you guys can hear what's going on. Hold on, yes. What are the, you can't just throw out a statement like one of my favorite 3 and leave us hanging. I just told you. That's really it. So it's nothing fancy. Some of the kick drum, again, I didn't do anything to the kick drum. The claps. Let me just solo the claps. I'm just adding some high end. You could hear the crack on that, right? And the Valhalla room, I'm curious what I did because it's been a minute. but I probably did something where I automated the Valhalla room. Yeah. So I added this here. You'll hear what I'm doing. So you can hear it was a lead in into the pre-chorus. So if you listen to everything, I just wanted a little bit of texture difference, and that's why I added it, right? So what else do we have here? So the drums, I did something really cool here. So this is hat loop. Let's see what's going. So I'm adding a lo-fi plugin. This is a really, really awesome. It's like distortion, saturation. You can actually bring the bit rate down on this plugin. This is like a classic from Avid on Pro Tools. So if this is without it, here's with. You could hear the volume change, but if you look down here, I'm adding distortion, a little bit of saturation. And this is actually Soothe 1. I'm taming the highs a little bit, but Soothe, I'm up to Soothe 2 now, so this is a little old, but you can hear what it's doing. It's just taking off the edge on the high end. That's all. And then I have here Noisy Hat. Not sure what's going on there, but we're going to find it. It's here. Adding some mid-range just to make it poke. This is without it. So sometimes one thing I do want to explain is when I'm EQing, sometimes I'm not doing it to alter the sound, but I'm using it as a volume, right? So if I'm boosting 1K, 1.5K, I'm doing almost 2 dB of boost. I'm doing it just to make it poke out a little bit in the mix. So it's just a slight volume change, right? Hold on one second. And then, I mean, that's pretty much it. Then I have a Soothe on. What's going on here? Let's see what's going on in this sound here. This doesn't come in until here. You could hear that. Listen to how much of the high end I took off here. It was a little bit too much. Okay. Oh, wow. 3 a.m. Well, thanks for joining us, man. Have a good night. So where are we at now? Let's see. So we got the drums, the bass. What did I do on the bass? So the bass pretty much was left alone. There's one thing that I do on almost every single mix of mine. So let's go to the drop again. Not much, except I'm going to show you guys what, oh, Max, great question. Let me discuss the bass first, and I'm going to go into that. So the bass, this is without the Dimension D that we talked about, the chorusing effect. You actually hear the dimension. You can actually hear the front and back, and it almost gets wider in the mix. So I'm going to go extreme so you guys can hear it. So obviously that's like quite extreme, right? I just want you guys to hear it, but it definitely almost brings the bass a little bit more alive than it was. Good question by Max is talking about mixing on solo versus in the mix. I rarely solo when I mix unless it's for a specific reason, and that reason is to fix something. mostly on things like vocals, or if I hear a resonant peak. There's a certain frequency that's just sticking out, and I just can't seem to get it in the mix. But rarely do I solo. The biggest mistake that novice mixers do is spend a lot of time soloing. I was one of them. We all were when we start. It's really important to understand that when something sounds good soloed, it may not sound good in the mix. So a lot of people would probably reach for a plugin. They automatically see the drums and they think, oh my God, I need to add a plugin here and I got to add this. And all of a sudden you get there and you have all these plugins lined up and you don't even need it. There's times that I take things off and the client will be like, wow, man, what'd you do to the kick? It sounds so good. And I'll be like, I took your plugins off. It's really important to start focusing on mixing. You're mixing all of these elements together and blending them together to try to give the feel of the record. You're not focusing on one sound sounding great, because you could spend 15, 20 minutes on a certain sound, then you put it in the mix and it doesn't fit in anymore. So it's really, 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 really important. Regarding saturation, how many different times it becomes too much? Do you recommend more bus? Okay. I have to tell you this. There is no rules, and I'm going to always say this when it comes to mixing and using saturation. There's no rules, right? You could use 100 saturators. It doesn't matter. Every saturator that I use has a specific job, and they all sound different to me. I know the decapitator like the back of my hand. The other thing that I use is overall on the mix. If you guys look up here on the upper right of the screen, I'm bypassing it. It's heat from Avid. This is an overall console emulation saturation. So watch when I play the drop and when I bypass heat. It's across all of the channels if you look up here. Now I'm going to put it back in. It's definitely doing quite a bit. And usually with heat, I start from the beginning. I normally don't put the drive this high. I usually am about 1 or 2 clicks. But the reason it's high is because Pat actually printed these stems quite low, as you can tell from all of the levels, which is a good thing. Pat knows now to give me enough headroom. And what it allows me to do is do more on my master processing because of the amount of headroom. If I get files that are too loud, what I do is I just go right over to the mix and I clip gain it down as much as I need to. Overall, all the tracks together. It's really important that people understand the importance of gain staging from the beginning. It's super, super important. If there's anything you take away today, is gain staging. Gain staging is so important, right? And to be frank, a lot of the plugins will react better depending on how you push into them. So some of them may sound grainy and nasty the harder you push into them. Some actually create a better sound with that. But I tend to find that the more headroom I give myself, the more saturation I can use. Headroom -6 to 12, -12. No, that's, well, are we talking about the headroom? Are you talking about headroom as far as on the master when I send to mastering, or are you talking about headroom when you send something to a mix engineer? Because that's a big difference. When it comes to mastering, I tend to go anywhere between like 3 to 5 dB. I do 3 to 5 dB usually. Once you get confident and you have a good relationship with your mastering engineer, you can go a little louder, because they know your sound, and also when you've been doing this for so long, you understand how to keep dynamics in a mix. It's really important to understand that, right? Because dynamics is everything. I feel like dynamics creates the vibe and the feel of the record, and that's ultimately what you're going for in a mix. Let's see. I do want to get to the vocals because it's really important. I want to show you guys how much work I put in. Max, there was one question. Did you keep his return tracks or do you prefer using your own? I always start with the client's return tracks on there, and then I'll try to blend them, and if it fits, I will keep it because they're used to it, and then I'll also blend with other things. So let's focus on the verse.
Mine, so gone is yesterday. I'm older.
So let's talk about this. I'm gonna mute. I'm gonna take away all of the. Yeah, that's 3 to 5 is very safe. If you peak at 3, that's good. I'm just gonna bypass all of this,
Oh my,
and I'm gonna bypass this and the silica beads.
is yesterday.
And I also have a parallel vocal. So this is the vocal. Now, hold on. Let me be a little clear here. If I really wanted to show you guys what it sounds like dry, I would bypass all of this on the master, including this. So here's what it sounds like. Here's the vocal. You're welcome, Lee. My pleasure. Okay, so that's the vocal, right? So now, what did I do to the vocal? I wanted more gain out of it and some saturation. I'm using the A800 from UAD. Here's the, with it. I'm going to bring back all of the master processing and the parallel.
Oh my,
Then I added an EQ.
gone is yesterday. I'm older.
You can hear that there was like quite a bit of like resonant peak on in the mid-range. So I'm actually dipping out. I'm doing some crazy EQ curves on here. So I'm high passing everything below 120 to clear up all the mishmash and the mud. I'm compressing a little bit, about 3 to 1 ratio, adding some high end at 10K, taking out that nasty peak at 3K, narrow band. I'm boosting 6 dB at like 700 hertz for some body, and I'm taking out more at 100 hertz. So this is without,
Oh my,
and here's with.
so gone is yesterday.
Afterwards, a de-esser because you hear the tss, 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 all of those S's.
Oh my,
Watch when she says yesterday.
gone is yesterday.
So I tamed that yesterday. Now, sometimes what I do with a de-esser is I may not need it throughout the entire vocal. I may actually just bypass it. I may automate it just in certain parts that it may need. Then afterwards, I'm using the CLA.
Oh my,
Bring up some volume.
gone is yesterday. I'm older.
And you hear that I'm just grabbing a couple peaks. I don't want to overdo it, right? Then I'm adding another compressor on here, the LA2, to catch whatever the CLA, which is an 1176 clone,
Oh my,
with.
so gone is yesterday. I'm older.
Also, what's really dope about this is that the LA2A, specifically this one, which is the LA2A Gray from UAD, it has a really, really, really sick sound. Like it actually adds some weight to your track. I generally use it on singing vocals because it's got a almost like a faster attack and a super slow release. so it's not as transparent as if you were to have a super fast release on a compressor. Extend mono. Cheers from Lima, Peru. Answer. Yeah, I do listen in mono all the time. I'm not even getting into that today, but yes, all the time. And maybe I'll touch upon it because we have maybe another 15 minutes left. Then I have an EQ to kind of EQ some stuff that the compressors were adding, which is some body.
Oh my,
Very light.
so gone.
And here is the Devil Lock. I told you guys I use it all the time. On parallel, if you look over on the mix knob here, right? On the mix knob, I'm using it very, very light. But here's without.
Oh my, so gone is yesterday.
You hear that? It kind of brought it up.
Oh my, so gone is yesterday.
And added a little bit of dirt, right? And then after that, another EQ to take out some bottom.
Oh my, so gone is yesterday.
And again, solo, you're hearing it and you're like, it's not really doing that. You know what I mean? Oh, man, all day, Tyler. I appreciate you logging on to this, man. I'm going to be doing this quite a bit. You might be thinking, like, why is he doing that? In solo, it sounds, you barely hear the difference. But when it's in the mix, like we were talking about why I don't solo, I'm doing this as, just for demonstration purposes. But when in the mix, there was definitely some conflicting frequencies on the low end. And I wanted the vocal because the vocal's so pretty and that's the feature pretty much. I wanted her to stand out. And then I'm adding on this. I don't think it was on here.
Oh my,
it is.
Oh my, so gone is yesterday. I'm older. Time is washing over me, sweet harmony. Oh my, so gone is yesterday.
That's the silica beads, right? This is this that we were talking about. Hold on, where is it? Right here. This is one of the most badass presets. It's funky. I'm going to crank it so you guys can see exactly what's going on here.
Oh my, so gone is yesterday. I'm older. Time is washing over me, sweet harmony. Oh my.
It has like a really high pre-delay, and it's just funky. I love it. Hold on. In the production, let me answer this real quick. In the production, do you advise reducing gain on the EQ plugin rather than the channel fader and keeping them closer to 0? Nah, man, there's really no rule because both of them might sound slightly different. I would start with the faders.
Oh my.
Then I have a parallel vocal. And the parallel vocal is like just a standard BF76 from Avid. And I have an API from Waves, which I'm adding like, God, what is this, 6 dB at 100? This is what it sounds like with.
Oh my.
That's a huge
so
difference.
Gone is yesterday.
Again, without it.
I'm older. Time is washing over me, sweet harmony. Oh my.
And here's with everything.
So gone is yesterday.
Now I'm going to take out the parallel so you guys can hear it.
Oh my.
Here's without the parallel.
So gone is yesterday. I'm older.
I could turn it up.
Time is washing over me, sweet harmony. Oh my.
So the parallel, believe it or not, I don't always parallel my vocals, but it's absolutely making a huge difference on my vocals. And then we have here, this is the double. Double is standard. I'm just boosting some high end.
Oh my.
Here's the. So this was what I got from Pat. Now, mono. Mono. Let's talk about mono. If you guys see, I'm bringing this in 72. It's, even though it's a stereo track, it was sent to me in stereo, I'm bringing it in because I listen in mono. And just so you guys see what I use for my mono, I'm literally listening on this bad boy right here. This is my $200 Bose speaker, and I have my faders right below them. So I sit here in front of this and I put the mix in mono, and I do all of my references on that particular sound speaker. Yeah, mono's the best. I always reference in mono, and it's not just about hearing phase cancellation, but it's really hearing about it's listening for how the frequencies sort of like, and I say this, rub up against each other, and maybe just there's conflicting frequencies. You can hear the clarity in mono. It's super important. Let me keep going on the vocals because we are running out of time, and I could literally speak for hours, but I can't. Let's go to the pre-chorus.
I am now and now is me.
There's a separate lead for the lead vocal.
I am now and now is me.
And as you guys can see, I'm not even, this is different. I'm not even doing the parallel on here because there's a lot more background vocals.
I am now and now is me.
You have,
I never been this far. Always more than one can see. So what you waiting for?
so the lead vocal, simple,
I am now and now is me.
similar to the lead on the verse, except I actually added this bad boy, the CLA.
I am now and now is me.
This is without it?
I never been this far.
No, Ben, I have faders here. Right below you, I have the Avid S3. It's a 16 channels. And what I do is I'm in front of the speaker actually doing my vocal rides and other rides in mono, very low. So I can really hear and pinpoint everything. So that's why you can't really see it, and I can't really move the camera, but I assure you it's the Avid S3. So this is with the CLA, and here's without.
I never been this far.
Then I'm adding a Helios.
I am now and now is me. I never been this far.
And again, the famous Devil Lock. Shout out to Sound Toys, my family in Vermont.
I am now and now is me.
And for the effects on this, I'm using the main stage, the medium stage, excuse me, which is this. I'm gonna go a little extreme.
Now and now is me. I never been this far.
And I just wanted a little bit of I wanted to distinguish the verse because the verse is almost like in your face and really sexy, and I wanted to keep that vibe. And then when the pre-chorus, I wanted to distinguish that, and that was just a feel thing. And then I'm using the little plate by Sound Toys. I'll boost that so you guys can hear it.
I am now and now is me. I never been this far.
This is literally one of the best plates on the planet, and it's so simple to use. It's so simple. If you don't have this plugin, get it. It's amazing, and I know that the way that Sound Toys creates their plugins, and they really, really model this stuff. Like, I've seen it with my own eyes because I make quite a few trips up there every year. This is one of the best plates on the planet, and super easy. So if you want it's almost like the Valhalla stuff that's right in front of you, and it's easy to understand and everything. Checking mono while soloing the 200 has given me so much more clarity and understanding. Totally, Lee. Yeah, Sound Toys is the shit. Excuse my language. I think my kid's still watching. What else? So let's get to the hook.
That's not the light, the shine that you do. Need you to know that. So hold on, hold on. Everything meant to happen.
So there's a lead on here, and I'm using the little plate. I don't have to go into that. I'm doing a lot of automation, and I don't even have time to get into that right now, but there's a ton of automation going on this song. You could see some of it in certain parts. Here. There's probably stuff going on. I don't know if anything's going on here, but there's quite a bit of automation going on. So you have a lead in the chorus, right? Then I have all the backgrounds.
No one that's got the light, the shine that you do. Need
Again, checking in mono. Yes, it is a Slate Raven. And I don't use it the way you may think. I'm not touching the screen, but it is a really cool looking monitor. Background vocals, nothing much to it. But if you guys look, I'm taking the chorus, all of the chorus, the lead and this, and I'm actually busing it to a channel where I'm doing additional processing. And this is without the processing.
No one.
And a doubler.
That's got the
Hold on, let me get it off of right.
no one.
And here's with everything.
That's got the light, the shine that you do. I need you to know that. So hold on.
So I'm using the Smart EQ. This is from Sonable, right? Sonable does a lot of AI plugins. They're one of my favorite companies. They're based in Austria. It's a really cool plugin. I would suggest you go do some research on them. I usually add this to the end of my vocal chains in general, especially more recent. Then I'm using the C4.
No one. That's got the light, the shine that you do. I need you to know that.
And then I'm adding some width. But on top of the width, I'm adding a doubler, which also is adding width. This is the doubler.
No one. That's got the light, the shine that you do. I need you to know that. So hold on.
I'm just showing you the extreme version of it. Welcome to anyone that's just joined us. Welcome to the dungeon. What else do we have here?
No one.
You have the harmonies. All of these pink are harmonies. So
No one.
didn't do much individually, but what I did do is I used the Neutron by Isotope.
No one.
Here's without it.
That's got the light, the shine that you do. I need you to know that.
I'm using the Helios. This Helios adds weight. It's got a cool, classic, distinct sound. I'm using the ATR 102 on the master and on some of the parallel processing. Adding an Echo Boy on here.
No one.
Here's without it.
That's got the light, the shine that you do.
Now, what you guys aren't seeing on the Echo Boy is if you click on Style Edit here, I'm tweaking this, man. I'm EQing the heck out of this. It adds color, it adds life. This is the reason I use this delay on everything. This is like my go-to delay. And I'm not even doing anything delay on it. I'm actually using a fat setting and I'm tweaking the EQ just to add a little bit of like weight to it. SSL channel, mid-range to make it cut through, and the S1 to add a little bit of width. But if you look, I'm bringing in the panning because of that mono thing. And the master as well does that. No, it doesn't, Max. That's why I constantly listen in mono. I always check phasing. Always. Reverb the same, and that's pretty much it with the vocals. There's not I mean, it looks a little fancy, but otherwise I wanted to talk about one thing, the parallel distortion, and we didn't talk about the keys. Pat's a phenomenal key player, so I try to respect him. So I'm going to just pick one of these. So here's the distortion. And on this I'm using the Sound Toys, the Radiator. I love this thing. I use this thing on synths quite a bit. On synthesizers, I'm using this because it adds a little bit of weight. So this is what it sounds like without it. I'll just bypass it. Oops. Shoot, sorry. Didn't mean to add that. Here's what it sounded like pre. And here's with the Radiator. Adding low end. Add some weight. And then we added this. More low end. And then here's the parallel distortion. I'm going to extreme. Just adds a little dirt and helps it poke out in the mix a little bit. It's a little trick that I do. I don't know what Pat is using on the keys. I know that Pat does everything in Ableton. He's an Ableton genius. But I don't know. That would be a good question. If you follow him on Instagram, he has, I think he does it live on Twitch where he answers a lot of questions. But he's a master of his craft. He's an unbelievable producer, unbelievable musician, and he picks his sounds. And we have a great chemistry when we work together. We've been working together now. This is our second EP, and before that I did a few singles for him before we really dove into becoming lifelong partners in this music game. But I'll leave it at this: is you have to communicate as a mixer. It's really important. The first thing to do is to communicate with the client, with the artist, with the producer, with the label. It's really important to talk about direction and find out where their head's at. It's super duper important. I'll answer one more. For width on the master, how far do you like to push your widener? As far as it allows me. Sometimes I don't even use wideners on the master. It doesn't make sense to. Sometimes what happens with the widening is as you push it, you start going down a rabbit hole where, like, let's say that I'm using, for this specific mix, I'm using the Ozone, but let's say I'm using this one I use a lot, the Brainworks. Let's say that I'm pushing the widener, right? And I'll just play everything.
No one, no one.
Watch, I'm gonna go extreme.
That's not the light that shine as you do. Need you to know that. So hold on.
Right? Let's say I half that, right? I take that in half. Over here, there's a mono maker. Now you start going down this rabbit hole, right, of bringing the low end and monoing the low end, and it starts messing with things. So here we go.
No one, no one. That's not the light that shine as you do. Need you to know that. So hold on, hold on.
So this is what starts happening. Now you're working backwards, and now you're messing with frequencies, and you go into the individuals. If you aren't comfortable with widening and you're not listening in mono, this is a PSA. Don't use it. Just stay off of it. It's really important. Some of the best mixers and my heroes don't use wideners that much. I'm very careful with it. I'm super careful with it, and there's times that I don't even use it because I know eventually mastering will do something, and that's it. And I think that's all the time we got. I'm at my limit right now. But guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. We had a really, really, really good turnout. What I'm going to do is I have 3 more of these, and I'm going to try to break down different genres. I'm going to do a pop record. I'm going to do a rock record. And the last one, I'm not sure yet. It'll be a surprise. But I think for the next one, we're going to focus on a pop record. and I won't tell you which one yet, but I will announce it sometime at the beginning of November, or second week in November. But I really had a blast. I love the questions. This was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Hip hop. Yes, that may be the last one. Although I'm spending more time doing electronic and pop these days. Do I do any production? I used to. We'll leave it at that. That's for like a long conversational masterclass. I was in the game early on. This was many moons ago. So anyway, guys, yeah, I will be doing rock. And the good thing about the rock project is an album I co-produced in France. I did the tracking in France at a gorgeous studio, so it's much different. It was my files, and I brought them back to the States. So I'm really excited to show that one. And yeah. So anyway, guys, thank you so much. You can follow me on Instagram at Mixed by Ariel. And I'm reachable, man. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me as well. I'm always on social media. And blessings to you as well. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. And on that note, I am going to sign off. Peace and happy mix.